Okay, this is the Park and Recreation Advisory Commission meeting. We are calling it to order. It is Thursday, February 6, 2025, and it's 5 PM at Nisswa City Hall. And can we get a motion to approve the agenda for tonight?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes,
And I will,
or agenda, I'm sorry.
I'll second the agenda.
Okay, then we're gonna, can I get a motion to approve the January?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. Any opposed? Mark?
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Can I get a motion to approve the today's or January 2nd's agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. Or,
Uh,
yeah, the minutes, the
Minutes.
minutes, yep.
I'll second that.
What is that?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries.
Motion carried. And that brings us to open forum.
Seeing no one. We'll move on to department reports. Just a quick one here. It's funny, I was typing this up and it said working on flooding in January and again in February, we're working on flooding. So we did lose a little bit of ice over those warm days. So between snow removal here, we have been building ice back on the north end. Also the Zamboni has been giving us some issues. We did have a technician come out. There was some damage to the vertical auger that they repaired. And then right after that, there was an issue with the starter. So hopefully tomorrow we'll get a new starter in and it will be operable again, but it has been down half of the week already. So, working through that. Recreation wise, winter programs will be wrapping up over the next few weeks. That's basketball, youth hockey, and adult hockey. And then in February, I send out sponsorship letters. So that's for the baseball field banners, team sponsors, dock sponsors. And this year I'll be working on the bench sponsorship that we kind of worked through over the winter. So all of that will be starting to be pushed out here through February. And then the other thing that we got going on right now is the Gull Lake Trail. The bidding is open for that until February 26th. So we are accepting all of that electronically. With Seth is managing that for the city. So come February 26th, we'll know what contractors put the bid in for that and what their anticipated costs are. So those are the bulk of the things we're working on right now, aside from the next two topics. So, any questions?
So Amber, what causes the flooding? It wasn't the weather, was it?
Yeah, the sun, the angle of the sun melts north ends of hockey rinks
Oh.
in the,
Okay.
upper Midwest, northern part of the country here. So yeah, we lost on the worst, probably 4 feet, and then we were all the way down to concrete.
Wow.
So,
Wasn't even that warm.
no, but the sun, when the sun hits,
It's the
it-
words and
it does some damage.
Yeah.
And then in between the sunshiny days, we added more water in hopes of that would be the ice that melted, which it mostly was. So the second sunshiny warm day was not as bad. So yes, we've gotten probably about an inch built back up on the north end. So
Another good argument to have something over top of it.
correct.
Huh.
So if this week, if we weren't flooding, we were doing snow removal. Cause that's just what Mother Nature gave us this week. Okay. Any other questions for department report? All right, new business. So 2 topics here that we're looking at. One is the community center. That's gonna be our first topic. Second to that is gonna be City Park. So the Parks Department oversees both the community center and the parks. Community center has one budget and the parks has one budget. Okay? I did put a lot of supplemental information in your packet. Since Bruce is new, this is just kind of an intro to him, but also a review for all of you guys. In your packet, I did ask a few questions. I want to be clear that city council sets direction and that my hope with this is it's more of an idea sharing brainstorming session, trying to make sure that we're looking at different angles, making sure we have our bases covered here. So looking at the community center, wanting to get just some feedback, some input, if there's anything operationally that we should be looking at. And then thoughts on a scope of work for community center updates. So within our capital improvement plan, we have a couple of items coming down the pipeline. So just trying to get ahead of that and making sure that our operation and our improvements are in line with the direction of that facility. Does that kind of make sense where we're looking tonight? And so questions in your packet are kind of the goals of the operation. You know, parks, we're always looking at the balance of generating revenue versus providing a service. What do we need to do to achieve those goals? And then incorporating different updates into figuring out the scope of work for some of those updates. Recently, we have done 2 furnaces in the past 2 years. 3 years. Looking ahead, the carpet, the flooring's coming due for replacement. I don't know how familiar you guys are with the community center. So there's part carpet and then there's part like vinyl flooring. And so the tile dance floor in the hallway is in better shape than the carpet. Eventually they'll both need to be done. The bathrooms, in part, where most of the repairs need to happen, the mirrors are chipped, the sinks, things like that. The women's bathroom, there's 2 sinks within there. One would be ADA and the other is not. Then looking at the toilets, partitions, and the tile within the bathrooms. Window shades, right now they're like blinds. They keep falling down and trying to get actual curtains there. And then staining the exteriors coming due. And then whatever board replacements that would coincide with that. And then the parking lot as well. So being that there's a few options and needs for updates, just wanted to kind of talk with you guys a little bit about how we want to go through this process, the scope of work for it, just kind of the magnitude of it. I did put in there the agreement that renters have. We have not updated it since 2021. Maggie and I kind of talk about it that we would like to update it again after these improvements. So we have that in there for you guys' reference and feedback, as well as a summary of how the space is used. It's primarily classes, nonprofits, birthday parties, things like that, and then about 8, maybe 10 weddings a year.
I do have a question.
Yes.
And it goes kind of towards the actual booking and charges
Yes.
of it. For the difference between a party package and for 100 people and more and 99 people and less, we're right around $700 almost. For the party package, why are you guys going by the amount of people and not just the space? And does the party package include like all the tables and all that stuff? Is that where that additional $700 is coming from?
speak on that?
Yeah, Maggie might have more history on, that was part of it when I was started here.
Yeah, when I first started 11 and a half years ago, I did extensive research about what other areas and what other event centers charge and that. The biggest piece is the more people that are in there, the more wear and tear there is on flooring and walls and bathrooms and things like that. And so, a lot of that price difference with those people came from that. And I mean, okay, 99 versus 100, like one person, you're gonna charge me $700 more. Like,
Right.
I know it seems crazy, but it's just based on how much wear and tear is in there for that is part of it. Obviously, more people are flushing, using the supplies, cleaning, more use of tables and chairs. The tables and chairs are included in all rentals. However, there's an additional fee under the optional charges if you want us to set them up or take them down.
So. Cause I would say that's probably like the biggest room for improvement. If for, I don't know, go with all the like I guess all the planning that I've been a part of and also like just party, whatever, things that I've rented, et cetera. It is kind of a hard thing to go across of people. I understand the concept of wear and tear, et cetera, but I mean, for, let's just say the weddings, for instance, do we just off the top of your guys' head, do you guys know if that was planned for 100 people or more? Out of those 4 weddings that happened this year?
There is a space in there for them to write how many attendees they'll have,
Right.
but we don't have it staffed. So there's no confirmation necessarily.
If you look at kind of the breakdown for the community center annual rentals, all of these packet wedding and events,
Mhm.
they have rented it for a 1 day, a 2 day, or a 3 day. Those are the $800 packages.
Oh.
When you look at those dollar amounts, they are paying the party package rate.
Sure. Because like you said, if you're flirting with that line of 110 people, I for sure would probably say, it's gonna be probably less than $100, $700, you know, to save the $700. But, I don't know. I would say that that would be like the one part that I would say that you guys should revisit, on setting prices for more of the rental of the space versus people, because then you can kind of average it out and, so you can essentially charge the 99 under people a little bit more and then make it a little more valuable as well for the 100+ people. And then hopefully in turn, you could potentially increase your revenue there. But anyways, that was my only thought to it.
Mike, I don't know if this is what you're getting at, but I kind of same thoughts is, do you actually lower that 99 and so the package would be higher for maybe 50 or 60 instead of 99? Is that what you're kind of?
No, I would say there should just be a flat rate for the room.
So if you rent it for the day, it's $500.
Yeah, it should be a flat rate for anyone who rents that building.
Based on how many people.
Right.
What kind of feedback do you get from that when you're given an estimate for the community center? Does anybody, when you're talking about a large group?
Nobody really complains about it. I would say if people are doing an event in there, I'll even say from a birthday party to a graduation, celebrations of life, sometimes there's a little bit more of a question in regards to those events.
Sure.
But for a wedding, people are like, this is still the cheapest place around by far,
Literally by far.
by far.
Yep.
And it's hard to separate if you say, oh, if it's for a wedding, I'm making this number up, it's $1,000. But if you're just in there for a birthday party, it's only 500, because then everybody's gonna say, I'm
Yeah.
having a birthday party
Uh-huh.
with
You have
a
to
band.
separate it somehow.
But yeah,
What about I see you had 87 nonprofits and you guys don't charge for the nonprofits.
that's another.
What type of nonprofits are typically using the facility?
Girl Scouts, Lions, Guard in the past.
The women's group, there's a Wednesday Women's AA group that uses it.
Yeah, mostly.
I mean, to me.
And then there's every once in a while, there's like a fishing or like a Pheasants Forever kind of one-off stuff, but it's mostly the Lions and the Girl Scouts or in the women's group are the
Lions.
consistent users.
Sure.
And-
4-H sometimes.
And do the Lions, since I know they use it and, you know, they have gaming, do they typically make any, I saw a $6,000 donation, is that from the Lions?
Yeah.
Yes, they make an annual donation.
Is the goal for the improvements to be able to increase revenue?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I think there's a fine line, right, of the level of service we can provide for the cost that we're charging. And so obviously weddings have different standards than a birthday party, typically.
Yeah.
And so one thought is, you know, right now, just keeping it status quo because we don't want to make too many changes too frequently.
Sure.
The other thought is yes, once you kind of make some of the updates, it potentially could elevate the aesthetics, which might offset some of the rental desires or needs. And so, yeah, it's a little twofold that way, but not necessarily like the updates causing the rate increase. No, I would say no.
Okay.
That's just inflation and
Yeah,
time.
for sure.
Where would Run of the Lakes fall in that category? Are they a non?
We have their own line item for them.
Line item.
That Run for the Lakes and the Firecracker Run each have their own. They're
Christmas
2-3 day rentals.
Yeah. We were just trying to, years ago, just track kind of what some of those events, because some of them were using them for 3 days or 4 days, and then it was just like, okay, how many days do you actually need it? And kind of just getting a feel for how many days these events, Firecracker Run and
Is it
things
usually
like,
2 days for those runs? Yeah.
and they do a fantastic job. They clean
They
up
do.
and
Those are great events.
hardly know they're there.
So service wise, we don't have an attendant there. It's à la carte. If you want us to do tables and chairs and cleaning and things like that, if you want those services provided, if you want the kitchen, if you want AV, you kind of choose your own adventure after you rent the room. And that's not the case for a lot of places, so that makes us unique. Sometimes the more you charge, the more they're gonna expect the staff to be present and all these other things to be included, so.
Mhm.
Looking at that, probably is another consideration as to renting the room versus splicing out some of the different services. As we look forward.
How long has the community center been there?
It's been added on to.
92? The 90s seem to ring a bell to me.
I'm gonna say that furnaces, I think they said they were 20-something, 8 years old, so that long.
Yeah.
So I was doing Girl Scouts there when my daughter she was born in 90. So it was an early, mid-90s doing Girl Scouts in there.
Yeah.
It's been around, it's been a great thing to have here in the community.
I mean, and that's a good point, sure, that's kind of what I was wondering about, your questions 1 and 2 there, Amber, I think are good ones, and I don't know what the council, when you talk about generating revenue versus providing a service, particular on the nonprofits. But I can give you the thought process we had, because we ran into exactly the same situation. I was on the council in Detroit Lakes with our pavilion. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the pavilion in Detroit Lakes, but basically the nonprofits were using that for no charge, or we had a nominal charge, which they always came and then wanted to be exempted. So you get all these nonprofits and they all wanted, nobody wanted to be charged. And that was impacting the budget for the city, because, we had our public works guys that had to maintain it and whatever. And then the same nonprofits were going to our liquor fund for their event and getting a donation. So we were, as a city, donating twice. So, and I have a lot of love for the nonprofits. I mean, I was in the J.C.'s and, you know, we used the pavilion a lot. So what we ended up doing was basically said, you know, you gave a discounted rate to the nonprofits, but nobody got an exemption. And then if the city wanted to support a particular event, whether it was maybe a firecracker run or whatever it might be,
Right.
then the city would donate through the liquor fund. And that's the way we supported the nonprofit. And then the regular city fund got the revenue from, at least some of the revenue from renting it. So just a thought there, if, I don't know, again, what the direction from the council is, or what the, you know, when you say what is providing a service, if maybe the providing the services, the city wants to do that without a charge to the nonprofits. I'm not arguing against that. I'm just saying, you know, sometimes to be fair, maybe it's better to actually charge a fee. And then if the city wants to support a particular nonprofit, they can do that another way.
Yeah, and I'll say with our current setup, if a nonprofit wanted to rent it on the weekend.
Right.
Where that's typically where the other rentals are coming into play, the weddings, the birthday parties, there is a charge for that. And it's 50% charge. So I'd say the nonprofits are very good about trying to schedule their items on the weekdays where we're not seeing as many revenue generating events. So that's kind of how we've tackled it currently. Trying to strike that balance.
Well, I guess a follow-up to my question about how old it's been, has it ever, I mean, because it really isn't generating all that much for the city, especially how much money that has to get put into it. Has it ever been discussed retrofitting it or changing the use of it in some capacity? Just through all of our master planning, the community center kind of got ignored a little bit just because it's functioning as is.
Mhm.
You know, would this be a time to take a look at it now that we're gonna lose momentum, but we're not going for the DNR grant? But do we relook at the community center and maybe relook at the master plan, and could we retrofit? Because we're, you know, the long term, we're looking at a new hockey facility and warming house, bathrooms, all that. Pickleball, do we look at the community center and say, hey, can we retrofit the community center and have half of that a nice new warming house with bathrooms that goes off, you know, and put hockey more towards the warming, you know, towards the community center, and you can have two uses out of it. Still have some rooms to rent out, but maybe you take off the wedding venue side and you have a nice warming house with parking that's, you know, connected to hockey. Or do we look at pickleball right off of it, and we can office staff out of there, and you can making money for pickleball and maybe add an indoor pickleball or so, you know. I don't have all the answers, but looking to retrofit and or change the use of the community center into something new.
I'll say during,
Has it served its time as we're looking at putting, you know, $140,000 into it?
yeah.
Fabulous idea. I could see a pickleball. Indoor pickleball. No, seriously, guys. I
You
could
said
see an
pickleball.
indoor pickleball just like built right off that, and that couldn't be any more than it cost for 6 outdoor, you know? You'd save a
Valid
lot of
points
money.
because
Save
you're,
a lot of money.
I'll say my time here, no, we have not talked about the community center in depth. And we didn't, other than, the different concepts of the master plan. It was largely not talked about. I think if there is, now would be the time to discuss these things. That's kind of why I'm bringing it up, because obviously the scope of work and the longevity of the building and how much we transfer, just want to make sure that we're on the path the city wants us to be on.
Yeah, and obviously that would put a wrinkle in what our current master plan looks like. But being that we haven't gained a ton of momentum in the fundraising, you know, would now be the time to say, hey, let's pump the brakes even more and
benefit.
take a closer look at that community center. How can we maybe incorporate that a little bit more into the master plan? Even if it's changing some things up and finding better uses for it. And still, I mean, it could still function as it is right now, but maybe changing it up and adding something to it or changing a couple of the uses within it. Yeah, I don't know.
That space in the basement, is that still just used for storage or is there? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Is it full?
It's actually divided into two different basements, and so there's community groups that have storage in one basement with some mechanical equipment, and then the other basement has city storage and other mechanical.
What do you mean community groups have storage? there?
Like the Lions, Garden Club, Women's Group. That's most of it. So there's like little storage lockers.
Oh, they don't take up much space. They're just small.
They're like walk-in
closet-
rooms.
Yeah, they're like walk-in closets.
For free.
You can't really use the basement for anything because there's no windows, there's really no.
There's no fire escape.
escape. So they wouldn't, I mean, you would have to.
Yeah, I remember it from, it's kind of dark and dingy and.
No, but I really wanted to bring this up just as we're looking at a new council here, trying to get them up to speed, getting Bruce up to speed. Looking down the pipeline, we have updates that need to, I think I originally had them scheduled for this year and I punted them out another year. But looking at the space, because it is a rental space, we do need to be proactive because I can't rent it while we remodel. And so trying to figure out the scope of that work am I just looking at the carpets and that's all we're gonna do? And I can just put a new mirror up and we're done? And we're gonna carry on? Does it include retiling the bathrooms, adding on the dance floor? Does it include remodeling bathrooms and making a single stall bathroom, the whole scope, for how we want the building to function for the foreseeable and the long-term future. And again, like I said, these are questions for city council, but helpful for me to hear your guys' thoughts and perspective on it.
Yeah.
I'm all for, my opinion. We went through a discussion on this with the Lions about what they were, they donate $6,000. They were very instrumental in building it. We didn't want to upset them too much by saying, okay, you need to pay X every time you're here. But I agree with Bruce. I think we should look at the clubs that use it, a small fee. Maybe it's an annual fee. I don't know how Detroit Lakes did it, but I've always thought that should be community centers for the community. However, if you have only 4 organizations, nonprofits that are using it, outside of the rentals, I think maybe you guys could look at it, a nominal fee system, whether it's every use or a year.
I think that annual fee would be a great idea.
Probably with a caveat of how many times you could use it though.
Yeah.
What's the plan, long-term plan? Aren't you guys planning to build a new facility down by 77 is the city planning to do some building down there?
On the property that was purchased.
Mark, is your microphone on?
That's a long story. It had been looked at, so
Short answer, no.
the fire department was looking at their building. A lot of things that needed to be done with it. Do we want to put the repairs into it? Or do we want another building? And do we want to have a safety and security building? So we decided, let's look down that path. We looked at a couple pieces of property to do that, to move the fire department, police department, and our ambulance in a different area, so it's all in one building. And then the discussions were also, when doing that, then the fire department, the fire building that we currently have, Public Works could use that because they really don't have a place to park their plow trucks and things in the winter, so they could utilize that. So we looked at different pieces and we ended up with the property down there of the ones that we looked at, because the council was told, well, this won't work because of traffic flow and that won't work because of flat, and this would be a perfect spot. The other reason why we looked at that too, when that came up, is because we know with development and getting apartment buildings in here, the city needs city water at some point. So that would be a perfect place to, it's basically the highest point in Nisswa. That would be a perfect place for a water tower. But that's still in the planning stages, the looking to the future type of thing. And on that also, there was a couple of organizations that said, well, they'd build a hockey arena there, but then the city would be liable for all the maintenance and everything, and you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars annual, so that kind of went down. But yes, we're still having discussions on what we will finally do with the property there. But those are the major things: a new safety and security building, and then water.
Well, I guess the reason I ask is because I didn't know how far out in the future that was, but following up with Paul's idea, if instead of remodeling and adding to the current community center, is it a possibility to incorporate, a new community center attached to the fire hall? So
That would be something to ponder.
when we built a new police station in Detroit Lakes, then we put a community, it's not a community center, but it's a large community room that allows nonprofits, because typically they're only having 20, 30 people at a time use the facility, and then they use it free because it's just part of the police department.
Right, and that would be an option too, is if and when, this is years down the road, building a new fire station with the police and the ambulance. There are some meeting rooms in that building right now, but then, and I'm sure they could be secured, but there would be, if nonprofits wanted to meet, there's a room in there that they could meet. I'm not suggesting that now because, I have no say in that with the, with the fire department, but that's something that could be looked at that time. But that does make sense.
I think there's a city council workshop coming up at the end of the month, and that property is a topic on the workshop, so I think you guys know as well as everyone, all these things take time, and so there's gonna be a lot of discussions coming down at what exactly that infrastructure is, and timelines and funding and all the different mechanisms that go into it. So I think there's definitely thoughts for that. There's thoughts on it if there's something different that we want to do with the existing one. All this stuff I will bring towards city council when it's appropriate. We don't have to make decisions here today. Obviously, they have the final say on what the building, what the agreement is, what the updates are, things like that. But definitely helpful hearing different ideas, different feedback, points of view, possible ways to navigate it. But yeah, really, I'm gonna have to dial down on that scope of work and figure out what it's gonna be. The carpet's the main one that's really coming due. And then there's room for improvement in other areas. Other thoughts on the community center?
You're fees probably are set for this year because you already. booked it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, that's already been approved for this year. So I took some notes on considerations for our next review.
Do you know how many weekends is already booked out for the year or no? I mean, not to throw 50% or?
No,
No, it's
Okay.
not 50%. Ooh, if I had to throw a number, I would say 25 to
Okay.
30%. Some, like normally, like I would say June, July, August, September is normally, October was booked all last year.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
and some of them are just 1 day, some are 2 days. Sometimes I try and throw a Saturday event and a Sunday event to try and, like, if somebody's already booking for the weekend or cleaning, I try not to make our staff come in too many times on a weekend.
Yeah.
Or too many weekends in a row. So I'm like, well, if somebody's coming in Saturday, if I can do a Sunday just once a month to try and double book some of that, I will do that. But yeah, July, August, September, and October were, I think every weekend was booked last year, and it's filling up.
yeah,
I
and
mean,
then the ability to double book depends on staff availability, since we're not here on the weekends.
Yeah.
To
So
flip
some
the room.
groups, I'd be like, oh, Alyssa comes in and has a birthday party. I know she's gonna clean up. I'm maybe not worried about it.
Uh-huh.
So there are some people that I don't always feel like somebody of our staff needs to go check and inspect it. But a lot of weddings, I try and sell the 3-day package just so it makes it a little bit feasible to have that there. But mostly weddings are Friday, Saturday. Sometimes they'll do a Sunday, but
How do they find you? How do they find the community center?
We advertise in Weddings North, and another local magazine. I think most of it is people are just from here.
or they've been to another
Been
event.
to another event there.
We are listed on the Knot and another event. It's called Event City or Eventive. I can't remember what it's called, but we are listed on a few of those just as our information, and it brings a link to our website because they're
Yeah,
free.
so you do have a website about the community center, right?
Yeah, it's on our city website.
We're just looking at the 2026. I guess I agree with Blake. I think the deal for the weddings is a pretty good deal, so we want to look at increasing that.
And I will just state this for, just for the new people or who have not rented it, you know, part of our rental fees, you're not required to go through one of our vendors, and we don't cook food and meals and things. Like, I will say the only restriction that you cannot do is bring in alcoholic beverages. That has to be purchased and served through our city staff
It's
at the pickle.
informal. It's informal and easy.
Yes, and so,
Mhm.
I mean, I've had people bring roasters and they were roasting a pig for a wedding event, so they had their little roaster outside, so there's a lot of flexibility.
Yes.
And for those who are on a budget, and, I mean, you're not finding any pricing anywhere around that is this cheap.
And as I told Terry when my daughter's reception was there for her wedding, that if they would have had a credit card reader there, they would have had more sales.
Oh, the pickle.
Yeah.
We're working on that.
I know. It's,
Okay. So going on, unless there's other comments on that. I'm scrolling to City Park. So just to walk everybody back through a little bit of history. We set a fundraising goal for 600,000 by February 1st of this year, and that was for phase 1 pickleball and playground improvements. As of January 28th, the Nisswa Enrichment Fund has a balance of $36,593. That Nisswa Enrichment Fund was gonna be used for matching dollars for the DNR Outdoor Recreation Grant, so we do not have enough matching dollars to apply for that grant. With that, we have asked WIDSETH to kind of pause on the planning, until we know more about our funding capabilities and sources. We are still going to get an initial playground design from Flagship. I talked with them earlier in January and decided to table it till the March 6th meeting, where we should have an initial design to comment on. But obviously, as we talked in January, there's some flexibility of the shape of the container and things like that. And so I did provide the feedback on colors and just general direction to them, so we will have something to respond to. But likely that is gonna take some time as well before we kind of keep running through additional revisions. So with that, again, questions for council, but I'm bringing them to you guys as well. We, as of today, set a meeting with all of city council for March 18th at 5 PM. That's ahead of the regular city council meeting. And that is to look at parks. And the heavy emphasis on city park. Looking through it, you guys know as well as anyone that we have aging infrastructure. That's where all of this has been coming from. The hockey rink especially, and then the playground. And so we will be having a workshop with city council to kind of step through some of this. But want to have an initial conversation with you all about how we might want to adjust the fundraising campaign. Any changes, how that impact the campaign or the phasing or budgeting, other funding opportunities. Bruce and I have talked about, and kind of the whole start of this was the local option sales tax. And if that's still an avenue that the city wants to pursue, if there's other options that we can be looking into. And then, it's been a while since I've shared with you guys, but just in your packet, I provided a list of all of the programs, the participation numbers, and the cost per program. So you do have all of that for the recreational services that we're providing. So yeah, mostly just trying to gauge from you guys, ideas for next steps. If you have any initial thoughts, otherwise I'll keep going.
The only thought I have is that I think that we need to put efforts at finding a team before we assign any numbers or talk about any numbers that we want to raise. Because obviously, we were able to raise $36,000.
You mean like a fundraising committee?
Yeah,
Okay.
and actually like put effort towards that versus a dollar amount, because our hands are tied. That's been pretty clear. And so, until there is a fundraising committee, I don't know how to go about even being able to throw a dollar amount at this.
Like I said last time, I think there's a misconception as to where these dollars are coming from the community, so I think that's a really good idea.
And I think there's a mindset that the city's gonna pay for a lot of this park.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's, either the city has to step up and pay more, or it has to be communicated that no, the city's not paying for it. Like, this has to be all fundraised. And not
Something-
this,
When we say the city's gonna pay for it, the community thinks the city already has the money, or that we are gonna levy for the money, which would be from the tax.
that the city already has the money.
Okay. To be clear, anyone that is listening, the city does not already have the money to fund this.
Yes, and we know that, but I think that I've heard from a number of people, they've seen plans of this, and I know we've been marketing it and we've been trying to fundraise, but I think there still is a mindset of, well, we see the master plan,
Taxes have increased.
taxes have increased,
Mhm.
where's our park?
Sure.
Yeah.
What are my taxes going for?
Yes, because I mean, looking at our parks, the city of Nisswa, I mean, we are a small town, but we only have 4 parks. 3
Mhm.
parks? 4 parks? And to be here with a long list of infrastructure that hasn't been touched in, you know, a long time. And one of the parks, I mean, we just formed last year, so we were really looking at 3 parks, so it's, as a citizen, you do have to ask, like, why doesn't the city have funds? Not necessarily for this big, huge master park, but why do we not have more funds just to have decent infrastructure?
Right.
Yeah.
That's been the current council's question also. You know, I'm not gonna lay blame anywhere, but I mean, I think a CIP should have been started 30 years ago or more, just for that, to help with keeping up with the infrastructure stuff, and that was pushed off to the wayside. We started a CIP, but it's nowhere near able to fully fund it. I mean, we went through the numbers, Amber and I, the other day, and it's a lot of money. No, the city doesn't have the money. You gotta look at who, when you ask people and there's a survey out there, and the 2 main amenities that they use within Nisswa when they come in, those are residents and visitors, it's the city park and the trails, okay? So I look at who benefits a lot from that. Okay, let's say we didn't have that city park. How would that affect the businesses? You know, in a way, they're benefiting because, and I know some business owners that agree, because, you know, they have people coming in with kids, and mom might be shopping, and then dad and the kids, they go to the city park. So they know, so there are a few business owners that understand they're benefiting. So I think when we look at that, there should be a reach out to the business community and others, and saying, no, we don't have the money. The infrastructure was not kept up, you know, to where it should have been. So let's figure out how to fund this. When we first started looking at it, the funding mechanism that the council was looking at was lost, local option sales tax, to fund the park to get it up to where it needs to be. My opinion is the 2 major things at the park that really need to be taken care of are the playground and the rink. If you take the rink out of it, or let's say the rink is shut down for a few years, it only takes 2 years for the people not to come back. And it is being used by pond hockey and the youngers and so forth. There are some safety issues there too. And I've stressed that Amber and this committee need direction as to where the council wants them to go. Henceforth, that's why the meeting on the 18th in March, to say, okay, this is where we're at, where are we going? A lot of things will be discussed there, but my hope is coming out of that there will be direction from the full council, and we can look at and seriously think about how to get the funds in there. But there also needs to be, just say, and I've stressed this too, Friends of the Park to help with the fundraising and keeping up with the maintenance of the infrastructure. Nisswa doesn't have that. I don't know if Detroit Lakes ever had that kind of group. I know Bemidji has a huge one, and it does well.
Cross Lake has a huge one.
Once some of the municipalities form those, I know we have a Friends of the Lake Park, but Bemidji has one that is for all of the parks, and they do a phenomenal job. And once that was organized and put together, it helped out immensely. They were able to do things that just kind of floored me. But and I'll go back to revenue and service. I'll just touch on that. My opinion is parks are never really going to be a revenue generator. but you'd like to see some revenue coming in with the community center, you know, and parks if we have pickleball indoor and that, to at least cover the cost for the maintenance and upkeep, and hopefully to help continuing with the infrastructure, take care of that. And that's what I look at. It's never going to pay for the $10 million for the park replacement. But I think the fee schedule really needs to be looked at. Do we start doing a nominal, or do you guys want to put a nominal fee for the nonprofits? You know, how do we want to do that? And as you said, you know, maybe use or add on to it for a warming house. Maybe maybe the thought is that just restructure, move things around in the park. I don't know how that's a whole new thinking through, and that might be a rabbit hole to want to go down, but things need to be addressed. The council needs to give direction. That's what I'm going to say.
So the other thing in you guys' packet, I kind of broke it down into some information on the playground. Because there's a whole, every decision has a different set of possible decisions from that. So with the playground, talking to Flagship, to replace the existing 5 to 12-year-old playground and some of the accessory structures, they're estimating about 200 to 250,000 to just replace what we have. For fundraising to elevate it to more of that inclusive destination level playground, we had a goal that was kind of earmarked at 690,000. For the hockey rink, I put some background information in there. In 2021, we started getting some quotes to make repairs. Retrofitting the lights at that time was about $35,000 to $50,000. To repair the refrigeration was just shy of $10,000. The concrete, we did patch it, just more like a liquid, non-expanding grout. So it's only a couple $100, but it's gonna be a continuous thing. Looking at those numbers, that led us into a feasibility study for the rink, looked at different replacement options. Depending on the scope, how big the rinks are, if it has a roof, if it has a refrigeration, things like that. There's anywhere from like 1 to 5 million. And then what we've used in the fundraising, it's more than just the hockey rink. So it's the hockey rink with the refrigeration, with the roof, with a warming house, with a maintenance garage, with a parking lot, and with that center plaza. Okay, so that's in part why it's 8.5 million, because it is so many components. It's not just the hockey rink. Since I sent this packet out, so we've had some repair costs, we've had some replacement costs. I'm looking at removal costs. There's glycol still in the system, and we think there's some level of Freon, some refrigeration. So back in 2019, they replaced the R22 with a new refrigeration coolant chemical. There were some issues at that time, and it's been inoperable since that time. And so they're not positive how much refrigeration we have in the system. So it's very hard for us to get a good quote on what the removal will be, because they don't know how much chemical is in there. So far, our best guess is about 8,000 to 10,000 to just remove the Freon and glycol. So that would be like kind of the phase 1 of the removal, will be removing the hazardous waste. That could be an environmental issue. So we just want to make sure that we're thinking about that and handling that appropriately. We do not want that leaking into the ground. From there, it'd be the equipment in the maintenance garage. City staff think that they'd be able to take that apart and bring it for scrap. We looked at the motors. It doesn't appear that there's a lot of value to them. So likely everything would go to scrap. And then the last component of removal would be the outside infrastructure. That would then be the boards, the concrete and the lighting. So there's phases within removal that we can walk through. With that, there's impacts different services, right? So the lighting, we're underlit for recreational hockey. So one service would be we just don't offer pond hockey program, but we still flood the rink. We're still open at night. The next level would be we're no longer open at night. The next level is we no longer have a warming house service. So there's a lot of different layers and options to the service. And that's part of the direction that I'm gonna need from city council. In terms of operation, in terms of how we want to spend our dollars, in terms of how we want to provide services. From there, we have the warming house and the bathrooms. The bathrooms are coming due for some stuff. And then we've already deferred on some of the maintenance garage roofing, re-roofing, waiting to see how this is gonna transpire.
There's a lot there.
Yeah.
I've got,
I'm practicing my summary, so if you have feedback on my summary as well, please let me know.
Refrigeration cannot be fixed, is that correct?
The last quote I got was over $10,000 to
I mean, you're
$10,000.
$10,000 by canceling pond hockey.
right.
No.
The biggest
Or
problem with the.
revenue source that
Yeah.
losing
The
revenue
biggest
source.
problem with the chilling system, it was, put in approximately 20 years ago. It was used at that time. It's outdated, outworn. So, and they've charged it different times over those 20 years. So the question is, do we want to keep putting $10,000 into charging it? Then the other question is talking to somebody that I know that they put in these rinks, is if we have chipped concrete like we do, there's a good possibility that some of the piping is damaged. If it's damaged, it's leaking. What is the leak? Now, you didn't say that is a definite, but it's a good sign that that could be leaking.
I'll say when it comes to pond hockey, the greater issue is it's underlit,
Correct.
providing.
Yeah, and I think that we should be spending the money to get lights, so it is safe for the kids, like, that.
I feel
it-
I'm gonna kind of echo things and maybe expound a little bit, but with that $36,000 that we raised here in the last year in hopes of $600,000, I mean, the question kind of comes up of how much are we gonna neglect the citizens of Nisswa and things that we're offering to hopefully, fingers crossed, maybe, just maybe, would raise enough money for a project that could be completed in 30 years from now.
Yeah,
We keep
Yeah.
saying 15, but the route we're going, there's no way that's gonna happen. So it's more of a neglect question on how long we want to push that off.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's
So
kind of,
what I'm kind of hearing you guys say is you'd like to use the money we have right now and put into our existing infrastructure.
well, to get people to come to here, Nisswa, to use things, we have to have a safe facility to have things. And people to provide a safe environment, et cetera. But if we don't have a safe environment or we remove items from people to come here, we're kind of in this pickle where we're not going to be able to raise money because we have nothing to entice people to come.
So as an alternative, throwing options out here, right? Like, so we have what we have, lights, concrete, boards. Is that what we would like to keep maintaining, or are we just looking to provide outdoor skating? Because we can flood the ground.
But the refrigeration system, it is key to the sun. I mean, because we've been out last week 3 times, and it's 3/4 of it is coned off, or a quarter of it, sorry, is coned off. And, you know, it's not safe, right? So it makes sense to have refrigeration to keep the ice there so we can use it longer. I mean, I think last year what we used at 35 days because of the sun and it going away, you could probably have used it a lot more days and generated more revenue to pay for itself or pay for the repairs for the refrigeration. It just seems like it would pay for itself.
So
to repair.
revenue wise, it's probably 2,500. And for staffing, we probably spend $1,000 a week on staffing. So just like, those are some of the numbers within the budget. Between, concessions and 2 pond hockey leagues and a handful of rentals. It's probably bringing in about 3,000-ish, 2,500, 3,000 for the season. And then our staffing, we staff at over 40 hours a week.
Throw revenue out of there. How many kids are you gonna disappoint by not having that facility?
It is-
And how many parents and how many community members? I
It's a lot
mean,
bigger
it
than
is.
just that
It
revenue
is-
source.
We hear it all the time. It is the most loved sheet of ice in the
It
area.
is. It is.
Yep.
And it is very well used.
There's people who drive out from Staples to use it.
Yes,
Like, I mean,
it is,
The number one store rink in the area.
yes.
Yeah, it, to me, I don't know.
So were you suggesting about using that $36,000 to get the lighting and to get the
well,
fix? Is that
it
what
was
you
like
were
the
suggesting?
first meeting that I attended last year, that it was, okay, we have what, $40,000 that we have to put back into the community to upkeep and whatever. Or do we just not do it? And I was on the other side of the fence a year ago of like, no, we shouldn't put any money in, but really having the safe environment for people to play, and then also just in general, people to come here. I mean, there's so much more than just obviously of renting the facility. It's also just bringing people to the community and the businesses and all that stuff. So yes, I would be suggesting, jumping into that fund a little bit to at least make it operable.
Well, when that fund was first started, we were gonna allocate the people that put that monies in, where they were gonna either allocate it to pickleball, the hockey rink, or the
Right.
playground. So we gotta keep that promise, you
Yep.
know? we gotta
Some
keep
of it
that-
has
Yeah.
been, some people did put notes on there for different
Yeah,
aspects of it.
can't- we have to stand by that.
And I do want to reiterate, we do need to keep safe facilities.
What's
So,
that other fund though, that we
Um,
do have?
so we do have, we call it the Make Nice to the Ice Fund. There's probably 120,000 in that fund, and that's only for the hockey rink.
Mhm.
The other fund, we have park dedication funds, and I'm thinking right now the balance is about 90,000.
And that's the.
And then we have a capital improvement fund that has 169,000. So we also have a $200,000 playground coming down the pipeline. Minimum,
Right.
plus the hockey rink,
I mean.
and then the warming houses and garages.
I guess I'll say this, and it's not gonna be the popular opinion in the matter, but, and I will be the first to admit, like, I don't have a connection to the hockey rink, and I know how popular it is in the community. But I do think that the city has put themselves in a position to where they've been putting a Band-Aid on infrastructure for a long, long time. And we're in a spot where we don't have any money to fix up the infrastructure, and we keep putting more and more Band-Aids on what we have. And I personally would much rather put money towards new infrastructure and providing something to the community that's going to be sustainable versus continuing to put it towards something that's failing and unsafe. And I would, I guess, disagree. I mean, I think if you shut it down, and I don't, like, ultimately, I don't want that to happen. But if you do shut it down, yes, people are going to leave because they physically can't use it. But if in 5 years we can come to them with a new facility, people are going to come back and want to be a part of a new facility. I would have to imagine.
Mark, at your workshop on March 18th, are you guys talking about the local option sales tax?
We haven't made an agenda yet, but funding sources and is like top of the list on trying to figure out how to fund anything, whether it is a repair, a removal or replacement, all of it needs to have funds. So I would say yes, local option sales tax, if there's an interest, I would like to gauge city council's interest.
So do you have, because you can call the Minnesota Revenue, or maybe you've already done that. Like if you had a 1/2 cent sales tax,
Maybe about,
We have a ballpark of what that would,
yeah,
then what would that be?
600,000?
yeah.
So 1/2 cent would be 600,000?
Mhm.
I mean, so you could,
That's an approximate.
A
Analysts
very
say that
basic analysis, a
might go up,
preliminary
but yes,
analysis.
so you're talking about 600,000.
yeah, so if you had if you said, oh, we're gonna have a 15-year bond of whatever, how much could you pay off at 600,000 a year? I mean, I just, and I apologize because I'm new to the committee here, but I mean, I had these discussions for 20 years in Detroit Lakes, and I'm sorry, I suppose I should be talking closer. But, first of all, I heard the advocate for you brought it up, I think, Mark, the advocate for the different venues, right? I mean, so you have we had a soccer, and probably same at Bemidji. You had a soccer group supported the soccer fields. You had the softball group supported the softball fields. You had the hockey people that supported the hockey.
They have one group up there that supports it all.
Okay,
So they have one group. So if it has to do with hockey, the NHL players that are retired up there, they take care of it. So yes, so they have one group. But if it is just for hockey, then those guys oversee that, but everybody else works with it. If it's for another area, there's a group that knows everything about that, so they head it up, but everybody else works with it. But yes.
yeah. So once you have, I mean, I guess the point I was coming to is once you have the infrastructure in place, yes, it's very important to have the community buy-in with groups or one group, however you structure it, to then support the maintenance of that, because whether you start a CIP program or not, you're not going to be able to do everything you want. It's just
No.
with the levy. I mean, I heard taxes going up here, and I mean, that's the problem you have. I'm going to tell you a quick anecdote, and I apologize for it, but we had one of our truth and taxation meeting come, and a guy we had the north side and the south side of town because they were split by the railroad track. Okay, so anyway, the guy comes and he's from the north side, and he railed and railed and railed about the tax increases we had, and why do we have these tax increases? And then at the end of his deal, he says, and we need a park on the north side. And so that's what you run into is, you have these tax increases, but people always want the amenities, but they don't want the taxes to increase. The local option sales tax would be a great way to do all the infrastructure, or maybe not all of it, but a lot of this that you're talking about tonight, and then supplement that with, you have a pickleball group. If you built the pickleball courts, then you have to have the pickleball group that says, we're going to have dues and we're going to help, not with all the maintenance, but with the regular maintenance.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and
I
that,
agree.
that was the initial talk. When we were looking at what needed to be done with the parks, the council said we would look into the lost. But now that the state put that moratorium on the lost, we can't, we're just waiting for the Senate, Minnesota Senate to say yes. And then that's when we will look at, the local option sales tax once
That's
again.
not Given either.
What's that?
So that's not a given either. Is it gonna happen? Are they gonna allow that to continue?
The House passed that they will allow now. They want to take the moratorium off of the local option sales tax with stipulations in there. They have to be for certain things. They can't be forever. And the way it is for the Minnesota Senate to come back and say, yes, we agree with the House, or we'll tweak it a little bit. So I'm ready. A couple others are ready on the council as soon as that comes through to say, okay, yes, this is what we want to do, and put it through. Then you have to bring it to the vote to the citizens to see if they want that. Because my opinion is we have, we have a lot, it's a tourist area. So is Detroit Lakes. So if you bring in the local option sales tax, people that are coming to visit and using the parks, they can help fund it.
I understand where you're coming from. What I'm saying, it's not a given, it's gonna happen.
No, it's never a
Right,
given that
so-
it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean, we can be hopeful, you know, that goes through, but that's not a given either.
Right, and, you know, there's also, we have to look at other ways to get people involved. To say, oh yeah, I'd love to have, you know, one of the local, citizens who has put $50 million into certain things across the country, and it's like, it'd be kind of nice if you could do that here,
Yeah.
you know? You just put $10 million into this academy, and you just put $20 million into that academy. What about here where you live? You know, I mean, that's one of the things you like to look at too.
So I think there's a lot to this conversation. I think there's gonna be many more conversations. Looking for some actionable items. Maybe discussing with city council, a fundraising committee, or just how we're gonna maybe get some more community involvement, a friends of an organization type thing. Looking at different revenue sources, sales tax, more options. Is there anything else? I think there's a whole conflict of repair, replace, remove, and
Well,
I
'cause
think-
the repair, replace, remove goes with everything. So if the playground is close to not being able, well, let's remove it for 5 years. I don't that doesn't make sense, right? Like, let's not remove things from the community. Let's repair them to make sure that they're here. Like, it just does not make sense.
But we have replacement funds for the playground right now, and we have $250,000.
well, we have
With play-
funds. How we want to use them is the question.
And the council wouldn't say, let's remove the playground for 5 years and do it. The council would say, yes, we need that replaced. Do we have the funds? We have the funds. Let's get this equipment. Let's replace it and keep it in there. And that's same concept with the rink. I started. When I was younger, if you wanted to go ice skating, you had to go all the way down to the mill ponds. Nothing around here. That's when they built that. And it was grateful because 1978 is when we started playing hockey out there. Like, you know. So it wouldn't be, let's just rip it out and it's not there anymore. It would be, how do we get it? How do we keep it going? One, the chiller system has been used in at least 4 years, if not 5. So it's not been used, isn't usable. So my question is to you guys, do we take out the chiller system? Do we drain it? Do we spend the funds to drain it like that? This is a question that will go to the council. Drain it, still have the concrete and flood it like we do now and keep it going so that when we do get the funds, okay, we have the funds, now we can do it. Does that make sense? Because I'm not of one that says, oh, let's just rip out the rink and just leave nothing there.
Well, I kind of heard that was a sentiment, like, potentially, and that scares me.
Well, I think that was just kind
Increasingly.
of an idea.
Yeah.
We're just kind of throwing ideas around.
Right.
But if there's money in there for repairs for the hockey rink,
There's $120,000.
we're not gonna get that big grandiose hockey rink 2-3 years from now. You know, it's gonna be what, 5 years from now?
The one thing about that is like I had said, I talked to a guy and they go around internationally and put in arenas, hockey arenas. That's their whole job. So when I was discussing about that, and he even saw how the concrete was chipping, he says his concern would be is that has now affected the piping in there, so there might be leaks. Wanted to know how long were we still chilling it? He says, no, it's been at least 4 or 5 years since then. He said if it were him, he would have all the glycol taken out because we're not chilling it now, and then using it as is until you have enough funds to do it, because he said if the piping is damaged and there's small leaks, that's not a big thing. He said, but if it's damaged and it's a large leak,
Then
it's an environmental impact and it will, so that's where I'm coming from. Let's take care of that, the glycol and the equipment, but keep the concrete.
Do you think you should have another expert come out and see if that is true or it
No,
can't be repaired? You know,
I didn't
like-
have him come as an expert. He was just down visiting me and we
It-
just took a look.
The city should do its due diligence to have somebody come out and look to see can the refrigeration be repaired? Because it will extend
did-
the life of the rink.
Okay.
If I was gonna make an overarching statement here, because obviously we could keep going around and around and
Yeah.
around.
Right.
And there will be more conversations come, but if I was gonna make a general summary statement of just kind of, we want to keep it safe and we want to keep the services.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do right now. We're
Yeah.
trying to maintain as many services as we're currently providing
Yeah.
in a safe manner.
Absolutely.
If that's the general sentiment, the how, we got
Yeah.
a lot on the how still to come. But if I was gonna have a overarching goal and direction, would that kind of sum up where we're
That
trying
sums
to
up
be right
me.
now as we work through these other items?
So does that pond hockey really take in $10,000 a year revenue?
No, like 2,500.
Oh, okay, I heard it wrong then.
No.
Potential is to have tournaments there at some point, but, and that can generate a little bit more revenue.
We're not there yet.
Okay.
There's a lot of.
We're
need for
looking at
ice
the here and
and
now.
That's
That's
what I
the
heard that.
thing, and there's a lot of like even Baja, like looking for additional ice. So you could potentially at some point, you know, look to the different, to Northern Lakes, to Baja, cause like the Hallett chiller system went out and they've been practicing outdoors, most of the season. And so, you know, you could potentially find a way to sell your ice if you had the ice and it was maintained.
We're forever trying to strike the balance of
Yeah,
private versus public.
yeah.
So while yes, there's the opportunity to sell ice and get some income back, it's still the service to the community and what's that balance and the ebb and flow of that.
And I think earlier we were discussing about, we didn't want to put too much money into it because we were gonna have, thinking about having another ice hockey arena a few years from now. But I kind of in agreement with a lot of you is that if you have an infrastructure in there already, you have to maintain it. I mean, that's what you gotta do. It does.
Is there a restriction on the 120 that's in, cause I didn't see that number before.
Before we went into it, I would want to circle back with the donor group that had been largely funding that to make sure that it's in line with their vision.
Mhm.
Like we talked about safety, like by next year, would like the lighting have to be done, like this summer?
I would leave that to insurance and maybe loss control to help us navigate that.
Yeah, same with like the roof of the, what can we get by and what, do we have to invest in from a safety, perspective would be, yeah, just interesting to know.
That would,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Cause ultimately, yeah, going back, like, I just hate putting money into failing infrastructure if it's gonna be, $50,000 for lights, another 10 grand just for, a roof, 10 grand to remove glycol when we have plans to redo it. Now, could be 15 years down the road, could be 2 years down, I don't have those answers
Well, and I think-
unfortunately, but
If we do have to, what's the interim plan?
yeah.
Right, it may not be the full kit and caboodle that we have right now.
Right.
But we likely can still provide something.
Yeah, a service.
Right, so
and,
the
yeah, they're
interim
flooding it
plan, I
now,
think,
so
is-
you might as well keep flooding it.
So that's what we don't have right now. We see a dream, we see a
Yeah.
dream, and we see what we have in reality. Trying to work through the middle parts or where it's really sticky and confusing and how do we, and if this, then that, and I think that's kind of the rub right now that we're all trying to wrestle with the
Yeah.
best way forward for how to use the limited funds that we do have, because I think we are all invested in the overarching goals of year-round recreation, recreation for all ages, providing adequate services, safe services. I think we can all agree that that's our mission, that's our vision, that's what we're working on. And so, yeah, trying to figure out and navigate the in-between.
Yeah.
So, any final thoughts? Certainly more to come, and I will keep you guys posted, as we work through the March 18th agenda and the topics, and if I need more information and dialogue from you guys, and you are certainly welcome to be there. Tell your friends,
Do you know the time yet?
5 PM,
March 18th?
So that's
March
the,
18th,
March 18th and 5, that's like the parks discussion with the council.
correct.
And then on the 25th is about the community center.
Not necessarily, no. Actually, it's not at all.
The 25th is a.
Council workshop.
It's a council workshop.
The council workshop will be
What-
discussing in part the infrastructure south of Holiday on the newly acquired land.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So,
We have to look in a few things to make sure we have everything set.
so there's no set time to talk about the community center, but I'm gonna tweak it in somewhere.
So the community is welcome on that 18th of March.
Yes, it's a public meeting held right here, 5 PM, council chambers.
Nice
Can
get
go
a
to the
lot of
workshop.
Community there.
So yes, I will certainly keep everyone up to date. We do have a meeting in between. Our next meeting will be March 6th. My hope is that we will have an initial playground design to react to.
So one final thought, I could follow up on what Blake says. So if the council's looking for some direction, do we want to follow up and say, we would like to see these groups that can step up to help fundraise?
That's what I have on my notes, that'd be one of our recommendations, is to figure out a funding committee group involvement and
Mhm.
how we want to go about, how,
Paula didn't volunteer?
no. Maybe she needs a couple more months.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, it would be nice to get a pickleball group, a playground group, rally the hockey community and get a hockey group.
Yeah, people have short memories. They're busy, short memories, you know, and I think the more we keep it, the community let them know what's going on and what's happening, and the better it is for everybody.
Certainly.
Yeah,
People
I
wanna
would think in this.
So I got it, being new to the area, that's another question I have. is A lot of times the fundraising, you reach out to the business community. Is the business community, it seems like we have a widespread business community. Are they supportive of?
There's a huge.
I think
revenue growth.
city council there's a
huge-
lot of different people that have some new ideas. And so.
Sorry.
So, we'll definitely put that out there as another, obviously the key stakeholder groups, how city council wants to go about it. We know that this is a missing component. Everybody's identified that we don't have anyone that's just taken the reins and got it going, and I think city council will work through that. That's one of my asks of them.
I also understand the different groups, but I think there should be an overarching group, to your point, because it's community. It's all of our kids. It doesn't matter if my kids do this and your kids do that. I want your kids to do that, and I want my kids to do this, and I want everything for everybody, So I do think we need to figure out how to do all of the things together too, and not fight over my money goes here and my money goes here, and
Don't want to make a bunch of silos.
yeah.
Okay. Until next time.
Okay.
Appreciate the input. If you have any lingering thoughts, you know where to find me. Otherwise, March 6th will be our next meeting. We'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll second the motion.
Gary and Alyssa.